Keisha, just so you know, the entire committee is here now. We're going to give another 2 minutes to see how many more faculty members and peers may show up, and then we'll get started, okay?
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Dr. Robinson Neal. I didn't see you enter. I'm sorry.
No worries. I'm just making it in right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it is the top of the hour. This is Calvin Lathan. I started the recording. You should be getting a message, everybody, indicating that you're aware that you're being recorded at this point. Again, welcome everybody. It's my distinct pleasure, to introduce Chekesha Schenck. I've had the pleasure of working with Keisha now for, it seems like forever. And of course, she said it's aged her quite a bit, this process, but she's at the end of a long journey. She's completed all 600, 700 level courses. She's defended her portfolio and her proposal with her committee a number of months ago, and she's now at the point of defending her dissertation in front of her committee and peers and faculty members. The normal process for this, for those that might be the first time online with us for this dissertation defense, is we're going to go ahead and turn off our cameras, mute our mics so we don't destroy the bandwidth, because Keisha is coming to us live from Germany, and it's getting rather late there. So again, we'll turn our cameras off. I'll make sure we stay muted while she presents. At the end of her presentation, I will then ask for Dr. Perot, her content expert, subject matter expert, for any questions, comments she has. I will then go to our methodologist, the illustrious Andre Robinson Neal, who's a pleasure to work with, and then her peer, Ebony Stubbs. Is it Dr. Stubbs yet, or is it still Ebony Stubbs?
It's Ebony. Oh, sorry.
Okay, she's right behind you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, well, you're going to have to drag her across the finish line there, Keisha. So are there any questions from the committee or anybody who's here for the first time before we get started and put ourselves on mute?
No questions.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set up was there a question? Nope. Okay, just confirming that there was no questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera, turn off my mic, or mute myself. And Keisha, you have the floor for your presentation. Good luck.
Thank you, everyone, for attending my dissertation defense. A seat at the table. Federal career advancements at the intersection of race, gender, and stigma consciousness. I would like to take a moment to thank my dissertation committee. Dr. Lathan, thank you for showing interest in my research topic and agreeing to see me through the end of my doctoral journey. Dr. Robinson Neal, you cannot be what you cannot see. Thank you for being someone I can look up to. In you, I see a reflection of myself and my boundless potential. You pushed me beyond what I thought was humanly possible, and I'm stronger because of you. You opened doors for me I did not realize I was prepared to walk through. Dr. Perot, thank you for being my seed. You are the reason why I first contemplated becoming a doctor. And I want to thank you for being there from day one, from the day I filled out my application to today. And to Ebony Stubbs, you are my sister. Thank you so much for being right there with me throughout this journey. You and I both know I would not have made it this far without you. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your village. Tonight, I will review the highlights of chapters 1 through 5 of my dissertation. I will then share with you my reflection of this journey and answer any questions that you may have for me. The problem explored in this study was that little was known about the influence of the intersection of race, gender, and stigma consciousness on the federal career progression of Black women. The purpose of this qualitative descriptive study was to explore the perceived influence of the intersection of race, gender, and stigma consciousness on the career progression of Black, female, federal employees hired through federal internships and students in recent graduate hiring paths. As a Black woman employed by the federal government, I experienced challenges attempting to advance my career as I strive to obtain a seat at the table where decisions are made. My personal goal was to explore and understand the influence of race, gender, and stigma consciousness on the federal career advancement of Black women, especially women like myself who were hired through a recent graduate hiring path and are seeking to obtain a leadership position. Black women often feel unheard. And with this in mind, my practical goal was to provide a platform for Black women to describe their career advancement as federal employees and how they perceived their race, gender, and stigma consciousness influenced their experience. That was very important to me. The senior advisor to the Office of Personnel Management, Director on Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility, stated, "Are there unique challenges for women of color in government?" I think all of us who are women of color would say, absolutely. But I need the data to quantify exactly what that is. So my intellectual goal was to add to the current body of literature to help improve the diversity at the senior leadership level in the federal workforce. I wanted to assist the federal government with its goal to improve diversity at the senior leadership level. As I designed this study, I explored multiple research methodologies. I selected a qualitative descriptive approach. Qualitative descriptive research is appropriate for research questions focused on discovering the who, where, and what of events or experiences and gaining insights from participants regarding a poorly understood phenomenon. I felt a qualitative descriptive approach was best because I wanted to describe what it's like for Black women that attempt to advance their career as a federal employee. The theoretical framework stemmed from the purpose of the study. The theoretical framework that emerged from the related literature was intersectionality, which is a theoretical framework rooted in the premises that the human experience is jointly shaped by multiple social positions, such as race and gender, and cannot adequately be understood by considering only one social position independently. Because this study focused on the intersection of race, gender, and stigma consciousness, I found the intersectionality theoretical framework suitable for my research. The core components of the literature review were federal workforce, federal pay grades, stereotypes of Black women, and stigma consciousness. The federal civilian workforce experienced increased employee diversity, but more progress is needed to advance women to senior leadership positions. According to President Biden, systematic racism, employment discrimination, and gender inequality still exist today. Black women remain underrepresented in senior leadership positions as federal employees. The federal government can improve diversity through their hiring paths. The hiring paths currently include current and former federal employees, open to the public, senior executive service, veterans, military spouses, students and recent graduates, individuals with disabilities, the Peace Corps, overseas family employees, and national and reserves. But this study focused on federal internships and student and recent graduate hiring paths. The internship hiring path provides students in four-year universities and community colleges and other qualifying educational institutions with compensated opportunities to work in federal agencies and explore careers while they're still in school. The recent graduate hiring path offers career development and federal career opportunities to recent graduates. The general schedule is a government-wide pay and classification system used for the federal civilian service. The schedule consists of 15 grades from GS1 to GS15. GS15 is the highest level. GS grades 3 through 7 can be categorized as internships, student jobs, and entry-level positions. GS 8 through 12 are mid-level positions, and GS 13 through 15 are higher managerial or senior leadership positions. Positions beyond GS 15 are part of the Senior Executive Service, which is also known as SES. SES consists of executive positions, including managerial, supervisory, and policy positions. Most federal internships and student and recent graduate hiring paths have promotion potential that includes non-competitive promotions. The non-competitive promotions may occur after you worked at the lower level for at least 1 year, perform at an acceptable level of competence, and demonstrate your ability to perform at the next higher grade level. The promotion potential identifies the highest pay grade to which you could be promoted without further competition. So for example, a position advertised at the GS11 level with promotion potential to GS13 level means you would be eligible for promotion to GS12 at the end of your first year of employment. Once promoted to GS12 level, you would be suitable for promotion to GS13 level at the end of a year without competition. Non-competitive promotions can be useful to Black women that struggle advancing their federal careers due to stereotypes of Black women. Black women often feel like they must combat stereotypes to prove themselves capable in environments where Black women are scarce and stereotypes about their abilities are prevalent. Black women's stereotypes include angry Black woman, strong Black woman, Jezebel, uneducated, loudmouth, and unprofessional. Due to these stereotypes of Black women's leadership and management abilities, employees may prefer to be supervised by white men, and supervisors may prefer to promote white men into management positions. These stereotypes can cause stigma consciousness and stereotype threat. Stigma consciousness is the belief that others see you in the light of the stereotype about your group, regardless of how you behave. Stigma consciousness widely influences how individuals perceive others and themselves. As a result, individuals who perceive themselves as targets for discrimination, stereotypes, and prejudice adversely influence their self-esteem and self-concept. The awareness of stereotyping and prejudice among Black women have adversely influenced their roles and positions in their working environments. Stereotype threat is when members of a marginalized group acknowledge that there is a negative stereotype that exists about their group, and they demonstrate apprehension about confirming the negative stereotype by engaging in particular activities. So here I have a visual for you, and this just displays the lack of diversity at the senior leadership level of the federal government. As you see here, Black women represent only 8% of the highest GS level and 7% of the senior executive service. It is statistics like this that justify my reason for this study. Each participant in this study met specific eligibility criteria. They were Black women hired through a federal internship or student and recent graduate hiring path, working towards or having achieved a senior leadership position as a federal employee. The desired sample size was 5. There were 45 women sought to participate in the study, and a total of 14 participants contributed to the study. There were 3 GS11, 4 GS12, 4 GS13, 1 GS14, and 2 GS15 participants. The 7 GS13 to GS15 participants were considered to have obtained senior leadership positions, while the other 7 GS12 and GS11 were considered striving to achieve senior leadership positions. I collected data from these participants to answer the research question, how do Black women hired through federal internships and student and recent graduate hiring paths describe the influence of race, gender, and stigma consciousness on their career advancement as federal employees? I followed Cresswell's data collection method for interviews. The purpose of data collection through interviews was to gain a complete and detailed account from the participants about the experience being researched. The interviews were conducted remotely because of geographical limitations and the limitations due to COVID-19 pandemic guidelines for social distancing. Participants were recruited through email and social media solicitations on my personal Facebook page and snowball sampling. Each participant signed an informed consent form that explained the nature of the study, the purpose, and use of the research, and the role of the potential participant. There were 19 informed consent emailed to potential participants, out of which 16 were signed and returned to me. Out of 16 women that signed the informed consent, 14 women set up an appointment time, attended, and completed the interview. 2 potential participants changed their mind about participating in the study due to fear of jeopardizing their career. The study sample included 5 participants recruited from my personal network, 2 from social media, and 7 from snowballing. The participants were contacted via Microsoft Teams or Zoom at their agreed upon time, and the semi-structured interview was administered orally with the interview protocol used as a guide. The completed interviews were transcribed on Otter, and a copy of the transcripts was shared with each participant to ensure accuracy as a form of member checking. The interviews ranged between 45 and 89 minutes, with an average of 57 minutes, and took place over a month's time. And here are the primary protocol prompts that guided the interviews. And as you can see, they all focused around race, gender, and stigma consciousness. I used Brown and Clark's thematic analysis to analyze the collected data. During the familiarization stage, I read and reread the transcripts 6 times to gain a deep knowledge of the data collected. The first 2 times I read the transcripts, I did so with the interview recordings playing, just so I can hear the participants' tones and their inflections, so I can understand their meanings better. I read the transcripts more times to familiarize myself with the data. As the transcripts was read and reread, I made notes and wrote down my early impressions. Once I felt comfortable with how familiar I was with the data, I went ahead and moved on to the second step, which was the initial coding, and that involved developing concise labels for important features relevant to the research question that guided the study. And here you'll see the 90 codes that were generated in step 2. And you'll see codes like bias, harassment, discrimination, stigma threat, code shifting. You'll see strategies and things of that nature that help to build the themes of the study. Next, I generated the initial themes. Here you'll see on the right the codes that were generated in the previous step. In the left column, you'll see the corresponding initial themes. So let's say, go ahead and look at the codes under career advancement strategies, and you'll easily see the relationship between the codes and the initial themes. They should be very apparent. You'll see things like improving your resume, networking, being mobile, using the pathway, being well-spoken, and things of that nature. And that helped me to build and support the theme of career advancement strategy. After generating the 7 themes, I reviewed and analyzed each theme for additional commonalities and overlapping foundations. I eliminated the themes of harassment, gender discrimination, and favoritism for white and male employees. I decided those themes were best represented under the theme of bias against Black women. The revised themes were stereotype threat, bias, childhood racial experiences, and career advancement strategies. Next, I defined those themes. And here we have the defined themes. Bias was defined as the ways participants were excluded from opportunities to advance, which was related specifically to race and gender. Stereotype threat was defined as the way participants struggled to avoid representing their gender and race in ways their career superiors and colleagues defined as negative. Childhood racial experiences was the ways the participants were excluded because of race or gender during their formative years. And career advancement strategies was the process whereby participants attempted to improve their chances and opportunities to advance in their careers that were minimized by the influence of their gender and their race. So I went ahead and pulled some quotes for you, just so you can understand how I was building these themes. I selected bias as a theme because bias was mentioned by name or implied by many of the participants. For example, Cindy said bias multiple times as she described how her mentor taught her about the influence of bias over her career. Cindy's mentor told Cindy that she had a bias against her because Cindy was overweight, black, and a woman. The mentor went on to describe that everyone has bias. The mentor could overlook her bias against Cindy because Cindy was well spoken, put together, and presented herself well. Shanita did not use the word bias, but I interpreted what she described as bias. Shanita shared how she applied for a position that she was already doing on a temporary basis. And the organization hired a white person that was referred by the program manager. The person had no experience, had no education, and Shanita had to train this person, even though she was not hired to do the job. She was very disappointed. Similarly, stereotype threat was a recurring theme. Neither Caitlin or Shanita used the phrase stereotype, but I interpreted their experience as stereotype threat. In great detail, Caitlin described how her mentor told her she could not take her seriously as a leader because Caitlin was an overweight black woman with kinky, unprofessional hair. To disprove those stereotypes, Caitlin took extreme measures by chemically straightening her hair and actually having weight loss surgery to improve her chances of advancing her career. Like Caitlin, Kenita changed her essence and changed the way she spoke. She adjusted the way she spoke when she was in front of white employees and refrained from using African American vernacular English for fear of being thought of as stupid or uneducated. Here we have the childhood experience and career advancement strategies. Caitlin talked about her childhood experiences dealing with the Ku Klux Klan and other traumatic events in her childhood at the intersection of her race and her gender, and how that increased her stigma consciousness and influenced her career as an adult. Similarly, Shanita described being the only black girl in her community and how she was treated differently as a child because of her race and gender. Like Caitlin, Shanita carries her racial experience of her childhood with her as an adult. She is very conscious that she is treated differently as a black female federal employee. The last theme, career advancement strategy, was common among every participant. I selected a quote from April and Stacy to share how I formed this theme. April described the importance of black women finding a mentor to help advance their career. Stacy described her strategy as being mobile and willing to relocate to advance her career. And she believed that white federal employees do not have to go to that extreme to advance their career. I interpreted the data to answer the research question how black women hired through federal internships and student and recent graduate hiring paths describe the influence of race, gender, and stigma consciousness on their career progression as federal employees. The results imply that people do not experience intersectionality the same. Participants describe the influence of race, gender, and stigma consciousness on their career progression as the cause of bias. They were excluded from career advancement opportunities due specifically to their gender and race. This intersection also is the source of stereotype threat. Participants struggle to avoid representing their gender and race in ways that their coworkers defined negatively. In addition, race, gender, and stigma consciousness was the reason for deliberate career advancement strategies whereby participants attempted to improve their chances and opportunities to advance their careers that were minimized by the influences of their race and gender. The intersection of these three factors also made participants feel excluded during their formative years. Participants used these experiences to determine how to manage career advancement challenges caused by their race, gender, and stigma consciousness. I ensured that my study was trustworthy by conducting a field test before the study, and I just did so to test the quality of the interview questions and to determine whether the research design would produce common themes. I also sent the transcripts to each participant as a form of member checking to ensure validity. I made reflexivity notes to minimize my bias, and I documented my decision-making points as an audit trail. I stored my data properly in a PIN-secured computer to protect my participants' confidentiality as well. This research will help different stakeholders understand the racial bias and stigmas that influence the careers of Black women. Leaders may use the study's findings as a source to take appropriate measures to reduce discrimination that may occur from the structure of the federal organizations. Intersectionality theory often focuses on race and gender of a population. This study added the factor of stigma consciousness to the intersection of race and gender and provided critical data to help solve the diversity issue at the senior leadership level of the federal workforce. The study's findings informed that the influence of the combined elements of race, gender, and stigma consciousness could influence the career advancement of Black women and directly impact the diversity of senior leadership positions. The study implicates a benefit to additional research focused on the intersection of race, gender, and stigma consciousness to provide a deeper understanding of the potential influence of the combined aspects instead of studying race, gender, and stigma consciousness as individual factors. The implications for practice includes the benefit of federal leaders developing mentorship programs, network communities, and training programs catered towards minorities to help solve the diversity issues at the senior leadership level. And also, implications for practice include Black women employed by the federal government using mentorship, participating in networking activities, and completing training programs to help advance their careers. My study, as all studies, had limitations and delimitations. The delimitations of the study were intentional. The participants of the study only included Black women hired through federal internships and student and recent graduates hiring paths. The study was limited by the fear of potential participants and the participants of the study. With these delimitations and limitations in mind, I have suggestions for future research. I see benefit in replicating the study using Black women from all hiring paths. The inclusion of other hiring paths is critical because different hiring paths do not have non-competitive promotions aspects, and I would love to understand how their experience would differ. Also, I discussed earlier, Black women made up 8% of the GS-15 pay scale, which is considered the senior leadership level, and Black men are even lower at 6%. I suggest future research using Black men and women. Because the U.S. federal government strives to improve diversity at senior leadership level, I also suggest future investigation including all minorities to capture the whole picture. Lastly, an all-inclusive study including non-minorities would be beneficial for comparison points. And now we'd just like to take a moment to reflect on this journey. I do have some lyrics on this slide. I will admit it was a difficult journey, and this song helped me on my darkest days as I tried to reach this finish line. And I will honestly say that the experience of collecting the data was life changing for me. As I designed my study, I didn't really understand the impact the process would have on myself, the potential participants, and the actual participants. I realized that my research topic might be uncomfortable for some, but I didn't understand the extent until the participants until the participant recruitment process. I honestly anticipated Black women lining up at my door, begging me for an opportunity to have a platform to voice their opinions and share their experiences. Instead, I found myself being rejected over and over. And it wasn't because Black women didn't want to support me. It was because they was afraid. They were afraid to share their stories, and they didn't know what would happen if they did. And that was honestly difficult for me to understand and accept. And when I began to conduct the interviews, and I began to hear the deep descriptions of the trials and tribulations endured by many of the participants, I began to understand and accept and appreciate why some were afraid to participate in the study and denied my invitation. And it allowed me to value and cherish each participant in every interview. And as I stated earlier, my goal was to conduct 5 interviews, and I actually completed 14. And I enjoyed the data collection process. Giving these women an opportunity to describe what it was like to be a Black woman dealing with the stigmas day after day, it was an honor for me. And allowing them to know that their voices mattered and if they're being heard, it meant something. It meant something to them, and it meant something to me. I am a Black woman that has struggled to advance my career, and interviewing Black women that had reached the GS level, it gave me hope for my future. And I believe that seeing a Black woman work hard to obtain their doctoral degree and to assist in the process, it meant a great deal to the participants. The dissertation process was grueling and most likely took years off of my life, but it is one that I will cherish forever, that I am proud of, and I would not trade for the world. And at this point, I will take any questions that you may have and thank everyone for listening and attending my dissertation defense. Thank you.
Thanks, Keisha. Excellent presentation. Excellent.
Thank you.
Dr. Perot, I'm getting an echo. I don't know if it's me or what, but Dr. Perot, any comments, questions for Keisha?
No specific questions. I had a question I was going to ask how this, influences you going forward, but I think you gave us the answer. It took a few years off your life, but
Yes.
I've experienced that as well. And I tell people these bags under my eyes are my war wounds from my dissertation days. So
Yes.
welcome to the club.
Thank you. But I will say to that question, I know I answered it briefly, but also towards the end, we were having a conversation, and all I wanted to do was finish and be done. But you reminded me that that's not it. Like, once I'm done, it's time to research and continue and learn more and share with the world about this issue. So I'm just ready to continue this research and to get the word out there and help solve this problem, because it can be solved. So I'm just ready to continue on this journey and excited. I don't want this to be my one and only study. I refuse to let that be the case.
Definitely. And, it's been fascinating seeing as you started the interviews, as you kind of dug a little deeper and got additional participants, and how much more of a story you were able to tell because of those, additional participants. So, working in this realm and being the SME, I'm excited for this to be published and to share it amongst my community, because there is a significant effort of looking at how to leverage the programs that you've specifically targeted here to say, how can we diversify our workforce and make sure everybody has the opportunities and so forth. So I think what you produced here is an excellent piece that will be leveraged by many here in the near future and beyond to help us, get some insight, because most often we do multiple choice or quantitative based research, and so to get this qualitative perspective and understand perceptions, because perceptions are people's reality and sometimes it's uncomfortable and people don't want to share it, but
Right.
I'm glad you were able to get the 14 participants, very well rounded body from both sides, those achieving and those that have achieved, to give us insight into those perspectives and perceptions. And the other piece is for those that read this to have hope, like you shared, that I might be having challenges, but these are the strategies that others have utilized to overcome some of these hurdles that they incur trying to progress professionally. So I could go on and on, but I'm just so very excited about what you've done here, and great job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Perot. Dr. Robinson Neal, again, it's been a pleasure working with you, Andre. I think this is our first committee officially that we've started from start to finish. So
Yeah.
looking forward to many, many more. But you're really our pleasure to work with. Any comments, questions for Keisha?
Well, first of all, kudos. And as we've had our conversations, one of the things that I mentioned was watching this process kind of change and morph over time into what it's become. And it's been such a joy, not only working with you, Keisha, but with your committee as well. Thank you, Dr. Perot. Thank you, Dr. Lathan. You've been wonderful to participate with in this journey along with Keisha. One of the things that actually just kind of popped in my head when Dr. Lathan introduced you and talked about that it is a late hour and that you are kind of on the other side of the pond from most of us today. And it made me think of this question. And I don't know if this would come just from you and your personal experiences in this realm, or if you gathered anything from your participants about a potential influence on their space and place in the world. Did anybody talk about, as they've served, that they were serving outside of the U.S., and what kind of feelings or influences that may have had on them? Or might you be able to share from your own experience, being an international woman as you are, how that may have influenced your own thoughts on this topic?
I will say for myself, and Dr. Perot may know about this, but as a woman who has been through the internship program, I was taught to advance your career, you need to be mobile. And they suggested to all of the interns, if you can get overseas, that is one thing that is beneficial for your resume. So when I got to the GS11 level, I started to look overseas, and that's what I did. And that was part of my strategy to advance my career. But I have not seen the fruits of the labor yet. And that is painful, but I'm hopeful that what I've learned throughout this doctoral journey from my participants will help me. There were participants that have worked overseas and utilize that as a strategy as well. So I have not given up hope. I just ended up in an organization that does not believe in upward mobility within. That was just, I did not investigate the organization that I went into. I just went overseas because that was what I was told to do, and I didn't do as much investigation that I should have. But it is a good strategy because it does look good on paper. But when I go to my next spot, I'm hoping that they will see that I'm flexible and it will work in my favor. Time will tell.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
And the last is a bit of an esoteric question, in that, not that I'm sure Dr. Lathan would ask you to do this, but if you were to do this study all over again, what might you do differently, if anything?
Yes, there are things I would do differently. One thing for sure, I would use my committee more. I don't know why mentally, I always feel like I'm a bother I hate asking anyone for anything in life. And it has nothing to do with my committee. Like they made me feel like I'm a bother. It's just how my brain is wired. I don't like asking anyone for anything. I would do that differently. I would have done Black men and women looking back. And I honestly did not get the statistics about Black men till later, way later in my research. It took some begging and networking to get that data. So I would have loved to combine the both, but it was too late in the journey when I had that information. But the best is yet to come. The
Yes,
best is definitely
absolutely.
yet to
Well,
come.
as the saying goes, where you are now is stepping into commencement, meaning to commence, meaning to start.
Yes,
So
yes,
we
ma'am.
look forward to seeing what comes next. And so
Absolutely.
that'll be really exciting. That's all I have. Thank you so much, Dr. Lathan.
Thanks, Dr. Robinson Neal. Pleasure. Keisha, wonderful journey. I don't think you've aged at all. You still look as young as you did in
Thank
year
you.
one. So whatever you're doing, keep it up.
Thank you.
But no, a serious side. In less than a minute, could you describe to a novice, not to me, just to to anybody in the government service who's not done research, can you, in less than a minute, can you describe the value of your study to not only Black women, but to the profession, the civil service profession, what its value is to that profession? If you could describe that to me in less than a minute.
Yes, the value of my study. The value of my study it's valuable to a person of any race or any gender. It's all about understanding. Whether you're a federal employee or not, this study is relatable to any employer because it's about the human experience. It's about bias, and everyone has bias. Anyone that is a human being has bias. And you just have to understand that how we treat people sometimes is unintentional. And we need to start understanding that the way that we treat people has an impact and an influence and an effect. And it may present that the study is about the influence of the Black woman, but it actually impacts everyone. It impacts everyone in the organization. So this study impacts the whole entire world, whether they understand that or not. It really does.
Excellent, Keisha. In fact, you made a comment early in your internship. You were encouraged that if you want to make the most out of this civil service career, you got to go overseas. You know, as 1 year assignments, you got to show that you're flexible and stuff like that. And you said, I think you made a comment, and the reason I'm sharing this is because don't be disheartened that you're not seeing the promotion while you're in Germany. Okay, because as I shared with you, I might see you next summer when I'm out there for a month or two in Germany, visiting my youngest son who works for BASF Chemicals, because he was told, because they want to make him a vice president, before he's 40 years of age of the corporation, that he has to do an overseas assignment. And so he's on his 4 year, with the family in Germany. But he won't see the fruits. I mean, he's getting that experience, but he won't see the fruits of that labor until he comes back to the States. So I think, Keisha, what you'll find is when you get, whether it's back to the States or Sigonella, Sicily, or wherever you go to next, I think you'll see the benefit at that point, because you'll have that. I did Germany for so many years, ticked off your resume, and in your GS12, moving up to GS15, hopefully really soon. So I appreciate your answer to that question of in less than a minute. You did it in about a minute and 2 seconds. I won't penalize you for the extra 2 seconds, but you did a great job.
Thank you.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. At this point, any other comments or questions from the committee before I look for hands raised and from our audience and other faculty member? Okay, anybody have any questions, please raise your hand and I will, Stacey Jones, go ahead.
Hi, Keisha. I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Very, very well presented. I really like your topic, and being just retired from the military after 27 years and trying to get back into the government system, has been a very, very hard task, to say the least. So I understand what you're talking about, and I wish I was one of your participants to give you some feedback as well. But I would love to, at the end of my journey, because I'm right behind you, I would love to get up with you and continue the research and see what we can find to make changes within society. Well done.
I would love that. Let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Dr. Barnett, or should I say Dean Barnett? I'm not sure what title you should use now, sir.
How about John?
Okay, John, you're up.
Keisha, I don't have a question, but I want to commend you for a job well done and really important work. And it takes courage, I know, to step forth and do this. And I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
I think it's important. Just keep building on it.
I will, I promise. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? James Ham, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a first year Dell student and actually based overseas and living in Pretoria, South Africa, serving the U.S. government, and a Dell student who participates across time zones. So I applaud you for working and completing this program. I just have a comment, like everyone else, I'm just applauding you for the work that you've done embarking upon this very, very sensitive subject. I think it's very valuable now, very valuable in the future, and as you indicated, to help turn our systems, our U.S. government systems, and our hiring practices across all of the U.S. government to bring about change. So I welcome you to please continue this study, this discussion, to help bring about change in the work that we do to make it viable and important for everyone. Again, kudos to you and very best wishes. Happy to talk to you as well. I'm serving as a Peace Corps country director in South Africa.
Yes.
And so it was interesting to hear you even mention the Peace Corps in your study.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you again, James. Last time we talked, I was an interview to get into the program, so good to see you're in the program. Good for you. Anthony Stubbs, I want to deeply apologize for forgetting that you're an important member of the committee, and I don't know. I'll take my lashes later on, but again, Ebony, as her peer in the committee, comments, questions, please.
No problem. No lashes coming, actually. But I just had a comment for Keisha, and I just wanted to, say job well done.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
This has been a topic that, you and I and Princess and our sister circle have discussed for over 3 years now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The value, the impact, the importance, and just how it has changed and molded you over the last 3 years. And so I am extremely happy for you, and I'm looking forward to the work that you will do hereafter upon graduation. But job well done, my sister.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ebony, for being so gracious and not punishing me more. Any other comments, questions? We've got about another 8 or 9 minutes before we have to kick everybody off this conference, including Keisha, while her committee and Ebony make a final decision on her status. And Keisha, I do have your phone number. I will text you before you fall asleep tonight.
I will stay up. No problem.
We'll make you wait till the morning. So, any other questions? If not, we've got some comments from Shay and a few others.
Thank you, Shay.
Area. You may want to look at them now before you sign off. But again, welcome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, everybody that showed up, from first-year Dell students all the way to your peers and your cohort. I'm going to ask everybody, and also Keisha, to please vacate the conference at this point. I will turn off the recording.
Okay.
So there's no evidence of what we say about you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for attending. See y'all later.